It's Boob Tube Boys time. I'm Brian Vaughn. I'm joined by two other people. One of them is Spencer Hendricks.
Of all the intros we played in the show, this might be the first one that I couldn't get through without making a disgusted groan sound. I'm angry right now.
Well, that intro itself has disgusted groan sounds all in it. The other person here is Van Lee. Van Lee is responsible for the next two episodes of Boob Tube Boys covering the 90s TV show Home Improvement. How do you feel about yourself, Van?
I don't feel great having selected it. What I do feel great about is that I will have the both of you here to experience Home Improvement with. Therefore, I feel like we need to act like we're good friends with one another. So therefore, Brian, puke face, and Spencer, dried hog phlegm Hendricks.
Why don't you shut your yap, you butt for brains?
That is totally how all 35-year-olds act, too.
That's what men do. Home Improvement. I've seen 2 episodes of this show now. I hadn't seen any before.
You really hadn't even come across one?
I bet you I'd seen pieces of it in syndication, but I'd never seen, plots play out or whatever.
Sure. And if you had just, flip through the channel, say, as a teenager, looking for something to watch on TV, and it had been Home Improvement, you would probably not have been like, oh, let's see what this is about.
I was very off-put by the idea of what I thought it was at the time, which is not what it is. I thought it was like a building show, more or less, which...
So you thought it was tool time?
Yeah, basically the show within a show. And you guys know me, I am not a, let's say, woodsy, outdoorsy, build stuff with your hands guy, so I erred on the side of California Dreams.
Sure. Well, I am also not a buildy guy, Van is, but having said that, I think it would be a lot better if it was more tool time and less what we have.
But I didn't know that at the time as a child. So having gotten out of the way the fact that I don't know anything about Home Improvement, or I didn't before, what do you guys know? Spencer, how many years of Home Improvement did you watch as a kid?
Well, I didn't watch it as a kid. I remember seeing some of the episodes on TV in our house, like a lot of the TV shows of this time period, because this show was popular when we were all in that wheelhouse of watching whatever's on TV. Like, we were all about 8 or 9 or whatever when the show was pretty big.
This was recess talk in elementary school, and I was left out.
Why would any children be sitting around like, oh, I loved it when Al Borland did this?
Because all of the girls who were also 9 like I was were really into JTT.
That was definitely in 5th grade.
And all the boys looked up to Tim Allen. No, I'm kidding. That part's made up.
In 5th grade, I actually didn't know who that was. He was huge at the time, Jonathan Taylor Thomas, of course. But I remember...
He's actually rather small, you kid.
There was a guy in my 5th grade class who was already exhibiting this toxic masculinity. It was like, I hate Jonathan Taylor Thomas. All the girls like him. And I was like, who is that? And I got our yearbook out and I was like, do we have a Jonathan Taylor Thomas
and there he was.
Yeah, and I went to school with them, as it turns out. But no, most of despite a few memories as a kid, including one of which was actually in this first episode that we're going to cover today, most of my experience came as an adult who watched these not by choice, but because a girlfriend at the time would watch dumb shows like this and George Lopez show. And I think it was Nickelodeon.
This has happened to all of us. Yeah, Nick at Night, for sure.
Yeah, it's whatever stupid syndication decisions they made in sometime in the 2000s.
By
and
contrast,
the aughts.
Spencer, when I was watching that in the 90s, I got Mary Tyler Moore Show, Taxi, I Love Lucy.
Yeah, that's really, a better era.
It just goes to show you, though, what was considered classic TV a generation later.
So that is most of what I saw, and we would watch just kind of, I don't know, a random episode maybe once a week or two if it was on and we were at that time eating dinner or something. It sounds awful, but that was a thing that I did. So I came across probably a dozen or so in my 20s of these.
About a dozen Tim Allens sprung out at you from nowhere.
Grunting as they did. Well, I did watch it as a kid, so that's where I experienced most of Home Improvement. And I'll say I've probably seen 100+ episodes.
Whoa.
In fact, and this really disgusted me, when I sat down to watch the 2 episodes we're covering, about halfway through, I realized I definitely recall this episode. I watched it either when it was live or as a rerun when I was 10 or whatever. And back then, of course, I didn't understand what Tim Allen was doing with this show or toxic masculinity.
And you do
that
now.
Stuff. I understand that stuff now, but then I just didn't think about it.
Now you understand how he's plying his craft.
And it was just, I don't know, goofy guy, can't get anything right, and bumbling dad. So I watched it because it was on the television.
Sure.
And I don't know, maybe the time I turned 14, we'll say, something clicked in my head and I realized this is not good. And since then, haven't really watched it.
The thing about being a kid in the early 90s is that there were a lot of bumbling dad shows. You were bound to get hooked on one or two or three.
And plus, you're a kid. You don't know what to watch. You might think Home Improvement is a viable option.
No. I've already told everyone that California Dreams was, of course, a show I saw every episode of as a child. That is not a good use of time for a developing young mind.
So weird to me to think of like a little kid, and this is a story of me sitting there watching Wings. Like, why are kids watching these shows?
I don't know. I was watching Empty Nest, the Golden Girl spinoff that has David Leisure in it. So I don't know.
Nick Fish.
Kids will watch things put in front of them.
We didn't really have anything else to do either. This is the 90s. There wasn't as many options.
No cell phones, only so many channels, especially if you didn't have cable for a bit.
I can't wait to tell my nephew Elias one day, like, I didn't have Paw Patrol when I was a kid. I had David Leisure, the weird neighbor on Empty Nest. That's something I'll probably say out loud.
I bet you will. I'm actually really impressed that you've seen over 100 of these, Van. I knew you'd seen some.
Impressed.
I didn't know it was that many.
Impressed is a good word.
This is one of those shows that we have an accidental sort of resident expert who can be like, I've seen all these.
Oh, boy. What I remember explicitly about what would happen in every Home Improvement was Tim would go to work, hurt himself or do something obnoxiously because he wanted to be a man, and then he would go home and his kids and family would yell at him. As an adult, having watched these, I understand that in reality what's happening is Tim goes to work, does his dumb stuff, comes home, and his kids and family yell at him because he's terrible.
Well, I would want to yell at him too.
They also somehow adore him and worship him too, based on some of these episodes. Like he's a dork and like a bumbling idiot, but everyone's like, oh, but Tim's fucking great.
Yeah, the sitcom dad, always a boring man, always the orbit of the show's universe.
Shouldn't be.
No, really shouldn't be. There are always more interesting characters. Speaking of this sitcom dad, Tim Allen is the guy who plays him, and the guy's name is Tim Taylor, the character. We should just talk about him up top. We have already, on Boob Tube Boys, alluded to the fact that Tim Allen is super conservative. Pretty well known also, he had a cocaine trafficking charge and a DUI, or a DI. Yeah, DUI, that's what it's called.
What's the difference between DUI and DWI?
I don't think there is one.
Good enough.
Well, he got one of those also earlier in his career. I'm not going to hold this stuff from 40 years ago against him, but, his political views have often been, at best, not saying anything, and at worst, blatantly hateful. I will give him credit for this. He has said he doesn't agree with the January 6th event, at least. There is that.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
Now that I have given Tim Allen the slice of credit I feel obliged to as the nominal host of this episode, let's rip into this fucker. Spencer, what do you got?
I will actually leave the personal stuff to you guys if you want to get into that.
You can rip into his acting. His comedy,
that's the
his
beautiful
face.
part of it, is that I don't even have to get into the personal stuff to describe the worst parts about that I've seen myself. I don't need to know anything about him. No. He's awful because of what he does on screen. Why does he have a career at all? I can't ever understand when I see anything Tim Allen's in. Have you ever been like, that guy's funny? Have you ever thought anything good about Tim Allen creatively? No, not once.
And I can't believe I'm about to say this, but Kevin James is better than Tim Allen at things.
I would say by a lot.
By a wide margin. Yeah. In fact, watching Tim Allen brings to light talent in men I did not think had as much talent as I now know them to have. And Kevin James is one of them. He radiates energy compared to Tim Allen.
That's very true. It might be annoying energy, not the kind you want, but yeah, it's something.
But he's a real performer, and Tim Allen's not a performer to me.
I truly, genuinely do not understand how he had a career at all. And I think about it, and he had this show for many, many years, which was super popular enough anyway. And the Santa Claus movies, my God.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about that real quick. Between 1993 and 94, this is just straight from Wikipedia, Home Improvement was the second most popular show on television.
That's
and at
ridiculous.
that same time, The Santa Claus was the #1 film at the box office. That's Tim Allen starring. And at the same time, the best-selling book in the United States was Don't Stand Too Close to a Naked Man by Tim Allen.
So Tim Allen is a mega star of this time period, and I can't think of one thing that he does well in a performative standpoint.
I can almost always see it when someone becomes a megastar, and we don't even have megastars like this anymore.
No, we never will.
No, thankfully, but who take over all industries in this fashion. And if we did, would they look like a hound dog man?
I was going to say, if somebody's going to do this, if somebody's got the talent, the creativity, the ability, the charisma, the charm to pull all this off. It's Tim Allen? What?
Especially of that time, I feel like every sitcom was getting a shot. You mean to tell me none of them were able to do this? Only Tim Allen?
That's something that only Tim Allen did. I think there might not be anyone less talented in any of the shows that were actually real, that had genuine careers like Tim Allen that we've even covered on this show.
You know what's happening here? This is Bones all over again. You or me ragging on Emily Deschanel and her horrible acting ability, which is true. She is bad at it.
She is bad.
It's you really railing on Tim Allen, rightfully so.
I just can't see why anyone would find anything appealing about him. He is not funny. And whatever part of Home Improvement I don't know how much of the writing or stuff he did, whatever say he had in that was awful too. He's never done a single good thing in his life creatively.
So the whole thing was based around, I love this.
This is good.
The whole show was essentially based around Tim Allen's stand-up comedy.
Which is just this, right? It's him sitting there being like, Hammer's big.
Yeah, and men are men and dads are dads. And then a slight parody of This Old House.
Yeah, Bob Vila.
With the Bob Vila show. Yeah, those two things. It was created by Matt Williams, who is not the guy that played third base for the Giants when I was a kid, Carmen Finestra, and David McFadzean. It became popular right out of the gate. The show didn't really even have to stall and wait around for people to pick up on it. This was this radiated energy to audiences in the way that Kevin James does to me, apparently. Fuck, the world's upside down.
Well, this is a topic that I've mentioned several times on Reddit in particular, but we simply do not live in a meritocracy.
Nope.
And oftentimes, for example, if you're a small content creator like we are, and you say something in the content creation realm or whatever it may be, people will immediately go to, well, you're not famous, so you're not good at it. But that's not necessarily true. Some of the most creative people in the history of the world didn't find success until after they were dead. Franz Kafka comes to mind. But that's a thing where if you have the money, the resources, and you get super lucky, that's how you get famous. Now, it seems like I'm kind of on board with you guys, though, for the 90s. Why was Tim Allen the one?
How did he stand out from the pack is what I'm trying to ask.
I still like that it comes back to that question is, why Tim Allen is the question we're all asking. And no one could possibly give me that answer in a way that would satisfy me. I can just confirm that already. That is why I said I don't need to get into whatever shitty personal stuff because I already have that animosity about his career alone. The fact that he's got the personal side too, this is a heinous character.
He's another guy who's said things out loud to the extent of, I'm not a star anymore because of my political beliefs. Man, you never had talent that I can see.
And he still was a star. He had that Last Man Standing show.
He did.
He's still fucking Buzz Lightyear and all that shit.
Wild Hogs. Home Improvement, by the way, was Tim Allen's first acting role with speaking lines and a name.
Wait, was he modeling?
I think he was like an extra.
He was a mute.
Dog face number 2.
All his catchphrases in the show are not speaking lines.
Right?
Not even full words that he does.
Yeah, you're one to talk though, right? With your catchphrase.
Oh, yeah. Well, mine's better, though.
It is better. It conveys a sense of agony.
If he'd done that, I would have been like, this Tim Allen's going places. He's all right.
And this show was the 90s. 1991 to 99, 204 episodes on ABC. Of course this was on ABC, by the way. There were other people in it who we probably like better than Tim Allen, at least. Patricia Richardson is Tim Allen's wife in the show, Jill Taylor. She's loyal, dutiful, no nonsense, like all of the wives in shows just like this. She was in a show before this called Eisenhower and Lutz. I don't know what that is, but I put it down because I like the sound of it.
I started the highway system. Eisenhower.
This couple, the Taylors, they have 3 kids. They're all boys because Tim Allen's seed is strong.
3 beautiful blonde boys.
And they all have kind of the same name. We have Taryn Noah Smith as Mark, the youngest son, Zachary Ty Bryan as Brad, the oldest son, and Jonathan Taylor Thomas as Randy.
Do you think that when all the kids they'd all been hired for their roles, and so the production department came up to them and is like, okay, we're going to put your name in the credits. What do you want it to be? And the first kid says 3 words for his name. And then the second kid goes, oh shit, I better have 3 words for my name. And then the third kid's like, well, fuck it, we're here. Let's do it anyway.
I think that the production crew let out with, how many names can you give me? And they all had 3.
You gave us 9.
You dump them out right
for
then
3
and there.
I think that should be considered a disadvantage for an actor, because when I see a 3-name actor, it's more likely I'm going to forget exactly what that person's name is. And therefore, I will not be as interested in their career.
Me too. I quit reading halfway through. I'm like, this is too many.
You got more than 6, 7 letters. We're done.
There's that one guy who was in the Green Mile who I'll never remember his name. I think it's Michael Ian Clark.
Yeah, TLDR.
Michael Clark Duncan.
Michael Clark Duncan?
Something like that.
I don't know. I'll never remember because I had a friend that had 2 middle names. I think it was like Ian and Duncan. So I get confused, and he had one of those names, and I try to give him the other one. And he was a good actor too, and I don't remember his name because he had 3 names.
I think Ian Duncan might be John Oliver's character name on Community.
Interesting.
Anyway, there's that. See, that's about TV too. We threw that in for free. Actually, wait, all this is free.
Oh, and the lesson too is just don't have 3 names.
No.
Especially if you're starting an acting career out there, don't have 3 names.
None of these actors really grew up to be prominent figures in Hollywood or anything like that. I will again mention JTT, playground sensation in the 90s. Kind of like a real Devon Sawa or one of those Culkins or a Lipnicki, an Osment.
And he was Simba.
He was Simba. There are no famous kids anymore. I think that's a good thing.
By the way, I think I checked recently. He did not do the singing parts of Simba at all. Just in case,
yeah, of course.
In case you were wondering, he was not the pipe.
It was probably like Celine Dion.
Well, and for the adult lion, it was also a different voice. Do you remember who that was?
Oh, I feel like I should know this, but I forgot.
Matthew Broderick.
Wow.
They went from JTT to Matthew Broderick.
When you think about a tough guy's voice, you want Matthew Broderick.
Yeah, he's a real fucking bruiser, just like JTT.
He did kill that lady. He did. It's a horrible thing. He was driving and something messed up and he got off scot-free.
Yes, this is true. That really took me by surprise. I didn't expect that phrasing.
I was just getting ready to throw in how they called him Bruiser Broderick, and then you mentioned how he vehicular manslaughtered someone. Is that what it was, I assume?
I think so, now that, Also, I said there are no famous kids. I realize I probably just don't know about them because I don't have TikTok. There are probably all sorts of famous
And you're not watching all those
true.
Disney shows that are probably still
that's
going
true.
on.
Like The Sweet Life of Zach and
Cody?
I think
Oprah?
that would probably...
Oprah.
Yeah, Fred Williamson is in the show.
I would watch it.
Richard Karn is in Home Improvement. He is Al Borland, Tim Taylor's sidekick on the Show Within a Show Tool Time. We've seen him in some Horace Christian type movies. Actually, let me just tell you some things about Richard Karn's filmography. First off, he's pretty good in Pen 15 that's on Hulu. He's also in one episode of Tim Robinson and Sam Richardson's Detroiters, which I have not seen but want to. But mostly this is what he's doing. MVP 2, Most Vertical Primate. Airbud, 7th Inning Fetch.
Wait, baseball related?
Uh-huh. Air Buddies, Snow Buddies, A Dog for Christmas, The Horse Dancer.
We've seen that one. That's the one where he was in like overalls and dirty and trying to get a woman.
No, we're not there yet.
Oh, sorry.
Amanda and the Fox. That's another. And Horse Camp, A Love Tale.
Okay, that's the one.
That's the one you were referring to. So in the last decade or so, about once a year, Richard Karn is in an animal movie.
Good for him.
Makes sense. The man is an animal.
Got that kind of I don't know, there's something about his face where I think you would trust him. He looks like a sweet guy who I guess you'd want in an animal movie where it's like, these are good-hearted people. Look at Richard Karn.
Looks like he'd give a good hug.
So he's in the Christian movies. Is he also bad personality-wise?
That's my question, because I don't know.
I didn't look because I didn't even want to know. I want some purity.
I feel like
in
he's
my
better
experience.
than Tim Allen.
I want him to be so bad because that's one of the surprises of watching him opposite Tim Allen. And not
charming.
liking Tim Allen made me really like Hal.
Yeah.
It's like, this is a good character.
Same here. And my thought is, if Richard Karn is able to work with some of these clearly free-thinking comedians of today, perhaps he isn't so bad.
Could be, yeah.
You know? Are these people going to want to work with someone who says that anyone who's not a billionaire should be thrown into a hole?
How big is he? Do you know how tall he is?
Richard Karn?
Yeah.
About a couple meters.
Well, I'm curious because
I don't know.
You talked about him giving good hugs.
Mhm.
Would he rest his beard atop the top of your head when you're
I don't
hugging
think
each other?
so. I think
No.
I think I might even be taller. But
He and Tim Allen are like identical pretty much. And I think Tim Allen's 5'11" or
Okay.
something.
Yeah.
So
They
I
look
would
like
rest my beard on their
You'd
head.
have to rest your
Okay.
beard on them.
Hmm.
But you could still pat Richard Karn's beard, I'm sure.
I'd do that.
He's
Good
got a
and he
nice
would.
fluffy beard.
Also, this is completely off the top of my head because I remember this like 5 minutes before we started recording. But I read an article on a reputable news site. I don't remember what it was.
Homeimprovement.biz.
Well, it was someone talking about Al Borland, the character, as one of the first great gay television icons. Now, he's not gay in the show, but the product of Al Borland is someone that, and this is not me saying it, this is the article. Obviously, anyone can choose what they want to be or how they, whatever. Anyway, they're saying gay people would strive to be Al Borland in the 90s.
Sure.
He's well-dressed. He's trim beard. He's smart.
He's single but has a good career.
Yes.
And he hates Tim Allen is the best part about him.
So anyway, look up that whole thing because it was a great read. But yeah, apparently Al Borland, gay icon.
That's
cool.
Amazing.
I also was struck by the young Richard Karn being more pleasing on the eye than I remembered. And his hair is so nice and lustrous, and it kind of gets in his eyes a little bit, and he has to shake it out.
He keeps himself very neat. The flannel is tucked in, you know?
You guys are fucking selling Richard Karn to me right now.
And we find out later in this episode that he might be hung. He's got a big old Karn collar.
Oh, I've got the clip for that shit. You know it.
With a K, both K's.
I mean, you guys don't have that hard of a time believing that, right?
No,
I feel like he is.
Oh, sure.
I feel like there's a hound dog just ready to be released from the gates when that zipper goes down.
Unfurls and hits the floor.
Like a fruit by the foot.
And it is totally accurate that Tim would make a joke disparaging another man's manhood. That's exactly the kind of thing that guy would say. That's perfectly in character.
Tim Allen has a neighbor. It's a guy named Wilson Jr., and he's a weirdo whose face is never seen entirely, but he dispenses poetic advice here and there.
The problem with him supposed to be hiding behind that fence is he looks like he's about 9 feet tall, so he towers over the fence, and you can see most of his head.
The actor Earl Hindman is, I believe, 6'4".
So
he's a big guy.
Yeah, he's more than a fence tall.
Yeah, because he is over that fence, and he talks over the fence to Tim, whose face is like in the fence. Like it's an awkward dynamic.
From Wilson's point of view, you don't have to see Tim Allen's face.
Right.
Maybe. That's nice.
But he does because he looks over the fence. If he'd back up.
We can see the top of Tim's head.
Yeah, that's better than
because Tim talks to Wilson on the fence.
You don't want.
I think he thinks Wilson is the fence.
He has no idea otherwise.
You don't want full frontal Tim Allen is
sure.
what I'm saying.
When I was a kid, the whole not seeing Wilson's face was a big fucking deal.
I remember this being part of the playground talk.
Yeah.
Too.
we were like, what does he look like? Does he have a big chin? Does he have a small chin? Other things that could be different about him.
And they do that dramatically in the show where there are scenes,
something's there.
We don't see it in these two, but there are scenes where you almost get a glimpse of Wilson, but there's always something blocking his face. And sometimes it's really heavy-handed, like, okay, there's no way he would put his hand up over his face in that scene where they go out of their way to hide Wilson's face, and it's clearly a dramatic.
Kind of like that. Like that at least shows some sign of zest, I guess.
Yeah, no, everything to do with Wilson is okay in this show. In my book, he dispenses sage advice.
And I don't know if it really is,
things.
or maybe just comparatively.
True.
Sure. Everything is graded on the curve, I guess, in this show when it comes to Tim Allen being in it.
Yeah, speaking of curves, there are two Tool Time girls that come out and tell Tim Allen it's time to start the show. One of them is Pamela Anderson. She plays Lisa. She's eventually replaced by Debbie Dunning, who plays Heidi. They are the Vanna Whites to Tim Allen's Pat Sajak, so to speak.
I don't know why he would need one of those.
The weirdest thing about the entirety of Tool Time, or, well, I guess Home Improvement, is that Tool Time, the show, exists at all.
Yeah.
Because what budget would there ever be for that sort of thing?
And it's sponsored by Binford Tools in the show, which is a fictional company.
Yeah,
it's a good bit of world building.
But they also have the Heidi or the Pamela Anderson, these obviously model women, so they're paying salaries. Like, if you stop and think about Home Improvement realistically, it is utterly absurd.
Are you kidding me? These are the sorts of shows that bring in the bucks, especially in the 90s.
Tool
you remember
shows.
The crazes about real world, like, little fixes you can do to your house shows? They were number 1, number 2 in the ratings.
And apparently this show is doing quite well because Jill doesn't work, right? She's just a stay-at-home mom,
yeah.
I think.
Is that right? Okay.
I think so, because she does all their cooking and grocery shopping, like women just did.
And should do.
And putting up with stuff, that's the other thing they're required to do.
So I got the sense that this whole, it's a total stereotype, especially, I mean, I know they're still trying to peddle it to some degree, but at this time period especially, and before, where that's just the man's the sole provider of this house. And it's a nice big house. He's providing for this whole fucking family. So obviously Tool Time is a huge success.
Oh, it's a big fucking deal. One more actor of note for this episode only. It's Christopher McDonald. He plays Stu Cutler. He's Tim's old college roommate. He's the fart king of Ohio. He is Shooter McGavin from Happy Gilmore.
The great Shooter McGavin. As soon as I saw him, that's
Instantly.
the first thing I thought of.
I texted Van right when that happened.
You eat pieces of crap for breakfast?
Okay, let's talk about the episode we're discussing today. It's season 1, episode 14, For Whom the Belch Tolls, from 1992.
Do you think Hemingway would approve of them using his title in this? Do you think he'd be like, yeah, that's fine?
Hemingway loved Home Improvement.
He would be a Tim Allen guy for sure.
The idea of that is really funny. Like any historical literary figure being into Home Improvement is quite funny. Cormac McCarthy's like, oh man, I can't get enough of this Home Improvement. Actually, No Country for Old Men was based on it.
I would love to see Hemingway actually have to, like a prime Hemingway meet a prime Tim Allen, because I think there's a high probability that Ernest Hemingway would just punch him.
Oh, yes.
Right in the face.
100%.
Well, they'd both be fucked up probably too.
That's true, yeah.
I think you're right.
I think we need a rule for this episode, guys. This, I guess, doesn't apply to you, Spencer. If you have a burp, just do it, guys. If you have a fart into the microphone.
Yeah, if you get a boner,
just slap
the mic. Yeah, slap that mic.
I mean, you can do that. You just can't burp, Spencer.
Yeah, I'm not capable. Speaking of which, we were supposed to do like a roundtable bitch about Tim Allen, and I just stole your part and took it.
So you covered it.
I was going to say, if you had anything, I'm sorry.
I think that'll be going on throughout.
Yeah,
also.
I was just going to do the normal stuff like, cancel culture, because that's what he blathers on about and has never been canceled.
No, I mean, I think I mentally had canceled him long ago for not being funny. The intro to Home Improvement starts. It's one of the most off-putting and baffling things I've ever seen and heard.
Okay, this is a very intricate part of what will make this episode of the Boob Tube Boys good, because I think it's one of those examples where I'd seen 100 episodes of this show. I don't bat a fucking eye at the intro. I've seen it all before. It's whatever it is. Brian has not.
No.
So I think you were blown away by this.
This is an eye bleeder of an intro. It's 90s glitchy animation. It's so fucking ugly. It's like a total relic of its time, which I normally like, but the music is just like people clanging wrenches on walls, and there's like draft paper, and then the sound every now and then.
So it sounds like some kind of experimental jazz with tools track,
and
I
there
guess.
Are drills.
It was garbage.
No, this is someone hitting all the pre-programmed things on a Casio at once.
Do you think they had Tim Allen like listen to this music and do the over it, or they just dubbed it? They just played it?
Hell yeah, I bet he was in the studio tapping his foot.
I'm like to think they put him in there with it playing. We're like, all right, you just do whatever comes to mind in this part, and that's what he did.
It was 3 grunts occasionally in the song.
He tapped into his inner muse and was able to puke thrice into a microphone.
It sounds like some big weird improv experiment, and that's what they came up with.
This intro sequence and that sound effect, which is one of the show's hooks, I already knew. All of the big ticket items from Home Improvement, the things that were tent poles for fans, they do not appeal to me.
They're
at
awful.
all.
They're stupid. I won't. This is yet another one of those things that we have covered specifically that was hugely famous, and I don't goddamn get it.
I'm delighted that you're the one losing it for
I
once.
think Friends is good now because I've watched Home Improvement.
This is really funny too, because when I did the Friends intro, of course, I mentioned, here's some of the options you have on this channel this time, and Tim Allen's Home Improvement was at the top of the list.
I got a laugh out of us, yeah. One last thing about the intro, though. I think if you slow it down maybe 10 to 15%, black and white, that's an avant-garde masterpiece.
That would be interesting.
Yeah. Then all of a sudden it's like a fuck button song or something too. It's like, it just sounds like industrial nonsense.
Now that sounds like a thing you'll have to do and put on YouTube.
Yeah, I had the first thought when he said it.
Okay, the episode opens in the workout garage of Tim Allen, and he's showing his oldest and most mulleted child, Brad, how to lift weights the right way. Then the two of them start talking about how Brad's going to grow up to be a big, muscular football player. I like that the garage has like tools and shit hanging everywhere. It feels lived in, but organized. It feels like what Tim Taylor's garage would look like. Again, this is maybe the only compliment I have for the show, so I'd like to just pay it up front.
Sure.
I think in a different show, you might say it's too clean, but in this one, this is a guy who constantly works with tools.
He has a show about this.
He takes care of his stuff, so I buy it.
It's a good garage.
It's crowded, but organized.
I've always wanted to have a garage like that in an ironic sense. Like, I would never use the tools, but it'd be cool to be able to look at my tool collection.
And then, like, walk out into it if a guest comes over with your kind of leaning back with your hands in your pocket going, it's kind of, this is my Hemi. Fuck, that's a car.
It works, though.
Whatever.
It works.
Maybe you got just an engine sitting out there. I don't know.
I'd go out there and look at it, too, like I look at, like, paintings on the wall. Like, I'd look at them and be like, oh, cool, those are decorations.
Oh, crescent wrench, yeah.
I'd borrow tools.
You couldn't. They're for display only.
Oh, yeah, they don't even function at all.
They're bolted into the wall. Randy and Mark, the two younger kids, they come out to the garage and start talking shit right away to Brad, like, oh, you're not as strong as you think you are. And Tim says, I'm going to cut your hair. I don't know. That's what's going on in this show. That's the quality of the writing.
It was a threat?
The garage door is just hanging open, so Jill says, hey, my garage has turned into Muscle Beach. And the camera turns around, and there are just a slew of small children lifting weights awkwardly, haphazardly. It is objectively hilarious, and it reminds me of that Tim Robinson, I think you should leave baby sketch, the Muscle Baby sketch.
The very first sketch in that show, I think, or close to. This scene, by the way, is the one that I remembered watching when I was like 8 or 9.
Oh, wow.
JTT's burn to Brad when he's lifting weights. Like, yeah, I don't even know what his line is. He's like, yeah, you've got real big muscles, Brad. The one in your head or the one on your head or whatever he says. I don't know what
That's the brain muscle.
But that would be a compliment. I guess Brad doesn't want to be smart, maybe. But yeah, I remembered that from being a kid.
And Brad is horrible at lifting weights.
He's using his whole goddamn body.
This scene already paints a picture for me of a show that has a different sensibility than me, but also than anything. I feel like typically in a 90s sitcom or any sitcom, you see fathers and sons bonding over sports. It could be other things too, but I got a weird sense from both of our home improvement episodes that Tim Allen has a different application of physical skill he likes his boys to have.
Well, and the added fact here is that Tim Allen's just like a mushy guy. He's not muscular in this episode. He's more muscular 2 seasons later.
I think he thinks he is, though.
Why would he have
He has like no arm definition at all.
Why would he even have a weight set in his garage? He's not the kind of guy who would, if you look at him.
It's also funny because he talks about cars a ton, but there's no car in the garage. It's weight equipment. I wonder if this is ever in the garage in any other episode.
I bet it isn't. And in the entirety of Home Improvement, they have a storyline with Tim building a hot rod. And so like every season he adds a little bit of work to it or whatever. And like in one of the last seasons, I guess he finishes it. And then Mark makes a video about it, like a celebration. You finished your car video, and then Tim didn't like it.
Oh, so that's kind of like that Everybody Loves Raymond that we covered.
Sure is.
Yeah, where Frank doesn't like the tribute video. See, all TV history connects.
Can we hone in on how you just said Tim Allen got more muscular as the show went on?
He did. I was looking
Does he end up getting jacked?
No, but here's
started
what it
down an andro with Mark McGuire, probably because he was so famous.
But don't think of this as like necessarily a compliment, because essentially, like you said, Brian, this show took off right away. Yeah. By the 3rd season, he was the top dog and had a huge contract and made money. People who make that much money and don't have to do anything, sure, you can work out a lot. Like, that's not hard. So I'm not saying like, great job, Tim Allen, but I'll give credit where it's due. He is at least a little more in shape next episode, because I guess he spent that 2 years lifting weights.
He spends a lot of this episode lifting weights. I mean, we are just killing time in this opening scene. Tim Allen he gets all his boys in a line. And he says, let's flex our butts for your mother, which is weird. Like, do your biceps, now your butts. Then he launches into an Arnold Schwarzenegger, I think that's what this is, impersonation, that is so lazy I couldn't be certain that's what he was doing. Tim Allen walks around the garage and the door frame with his arms out to his sides in a manner suggesting he's too muscular to get through the door frame. He continues this for the rest of the scene as some sort of in-joke with Jill. It is not funny. It is very annoying.
And I will give credit to you, Brian, because your Arnold Schwarzenegger, way better than his.
Yeah, everything about me is better than Tim Allen. Look, everything about everyone is. Jill's still in the kitchen making breakfast because she is wife. Because it's morning when all this is happening. I don't know if I've mentioned that yet, but everyone's working, just having a weight party in the morning.
That was weird. I was thrown off by that too. Nothing about the weightlifting seemed like a morning thing until...
This all seemed like after work.
Sure. And then you go in there and Jill's cooking bacon. It's like, what's going on in the Taylor household right now?
Which you're going to be asking a lot throughout these next couple of episodes. While Jill is preparing breakfast, she calls out to Tim and says, can you do one goddamn thing for me? She actually is nice all the time to him for some reason.
Except for that later on when she,
Well, yeah.
It's because he's so disgusting that she has to yell at him.
Which is fair. Jill asked him to pick up some VHS cassette tapes after work for the family to watch for family night, and I like just hearing that phrase even. That sounds nice, renting a cassette tape. I wonder where they were going. Blockbuster?
Probably a video
Smitty's Video Playhouse. Yeah, movie gallery. Now, all those boys and Tim, they want to watch Bayonet Hell, which... Sure, sounds pretty cool. But Jill wants to watch The Sound of Music, which prompts all the boys to scream and melt and turn into stone.
To be fair, I wouldn't want to watch that either, but that is a really annoying cliche that they leaned on is, women want to watch musicals, ew.
Yeah, and that, I agree, Spencer. Regardless of what you think of the movie, it's a lazy reference.
I'll tell you, though, I would much rather watch Bayonet Hell or The Sound of Music than Home Improvement, or the other two movies they mentioned, Bury Me Again and Fang Woman. Any of those I'd watch.
Fang Woman.
That sounds
That's pretty awesome. I call my cat Koopa Fang Boy pretty often because he has one.
I wonder if he knows Fang
that
Woman.
Comes out.
He might.
I've asked him, and he doesn't seem committal about it. So yes, I think he does.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
While all this nonsense is going on, Stu Cutler calls. Who is that? That's that guy I mentioned earlier. It's Shooter McGavin from Happy Gilmore, and he's in town from Akron, Ohio. He's Tim's old college roommate, and he wants to hang out. We get the sense right away Jill hates this man, and the two of them, Tim Allen and this guy, Stu Cutler, they have like those razzes and sex jokes that we alluded to earlier, where their friendship is based around hating one another out in the open and not talking about anything serious. Jill says the only things that Stu ever does is drink and fart, and Tim says, yeah, that rules. I'm Tim Allen. I think these things are very appealing.
That's pretty much all I ever do.
Speaking of appealing, Home Improvement is not. Taking a break is. Now that we know Stu Cutler's coming to town, it's time for Tool Time, the show that Tim Allen hosts alongside Al Borland. And as far as I can tell, it only ever talks about doors and windows, and the hosts hate one another. Tim and Al are alternating talking about windows and plastic sheets, and we get that sense of their dynamic with one another. Tim starts telling Al about how to use an air dryer on the window, but he intentionally blasts Al with the air to annoy him.
And his lustrous, perfect hair.
Al's hair does blow right back into place.
It's so nice.
Yeah, it seems soft.
And Al is, of course, he really is Bob Vila.
Yeah.
He wears the flannel.
He looks like Bob Vila, too.
He's capable and all that stuff. So Tim's the hotshot young new magician who came in town.
Yeah, he's the eye candy. As we've established, he's jacked.
But then you've got Al Borland here, old steady. Like, he will get shit done. He'll build a house. He'll build other things that I can't think of that you could build.
You can only build houses.
That's it. Nothing else. I like how we've made me out to be like the guy who can do tools and stuff, and that's true to an extent. And yet I'm here like, you can only build a house.
Yeah, well,
Nothing else.
Again, relative to the room, you're a regular...
Tim Allen.
Oh, that's mean.
Tim Taylor. That's like marginally better, I guess.
Marginal.
I guess, maybe. Technically.
Well, Tim Taylor isn't an ultra-billionaire. He's at least just a successful tool man.
Pamela Anderson brings out a window or something to Tim Allen, and then Tim goes ahead and gives us an idea of both his real and fake show's shared comedic sensibility.
Now, this works best if you don't happen to have a hairdryer. You can always get your mother-in-law over the house and have her yap at the window for a while.
You know, you should have married Dr. Conrad. He's a brain surgeon. No, you end up this loser on the tool show.
That is the least funny thing I've ever heard.
Is there anything worse than mother-in-law jokes?
No, and that's maybe the worst one. It's not even a joke. It's just talking like a parrot, I guess.
I will say
Iago from Aladdin wandered in.
It probably is accurate. I bet Dr. Conrad is a superior choice for Jill.
That's true. I mean, doctor is in his name. Conrad, that guy's cool from Matlock. Al dryly points out to Tim, hey, you have already actually irritated your mother-in-law by having done that on television. And that sort of ends the scene. So that's it for our coverage of Tool Time. What did you guys think? Did you identify with any of the characters? Compared to a lot of the other shows we've covered on Boob Tube Boys, how does Tool Time stack up?
I liked the character arc that they introduced where the host fell in love for a little while but realized it was forbidden love. Yeah. But other than that, I could take it or leave it.
Spencer, what did you think about their window sealing techniques?
Okay, there was a part of that scene where I had to think about and wonder if it was possible. And I was like, oh, I wonder if that maybe is a tip that I could use in real life.
It is.
The rest of the show, not so much. Like I said, more Tool time would have been a good thing. So
yeah.
A+ on Tool time.
So we're on record, all three of us, then Tool time better than Home Improvement. So let's go back to Home Improvement, the other show we're covering today. Stu Cutler's waiting backstage at Tool time as the show ends, and he's got a jean jacket and a big, thick mustache, and he bear hugs and punches Tim Allen, which the second part is cool. Right after this happens, Al tries to sneak away without being seen.
Good choice, Al.
And kind of looks onto this Tim and Stu situation skeptically. He kind of gets a sense that Stu is a scumbag right away because Al Borland is kind of the best character, I guess.
I was going to say, another reason this interaction here to really like Al's character.
And that mustache Stu has does not do him any favors in the creep department. It is wow.
That is a bristly broom of a lip writer.
And Christopher McDonald, I don't want to insult him. He doesn't have the best of faces. It's very memorable. It's a memorable face, but I don't think the mustache is doing him any favors.
He doesn't need any facial hair.
This is the thing I like about Christopher McDonald is what you just said, Spencer. He has a character actor's face, and I mean that as a compliment.
It stands out, that's for sure.
He's a guy who can make a character memorable and he's also very expressive, his facial expressions. Tim Allen, for instance, seems lost a lot of the time by comparison to anyone. To that window he was standing beside.
Well, I guarantee that this was also a situation where they had to name the character Tim because he was too dumb and he wouldn't respond.
A real Tony Danza. Tim Taylor calls Al over to meet his old college roomie, and Al no-sells this whole shit. Stu's really enthusiastic and says, "Hey, Al, you got chili in your beard, and I hate Tim. He's a jerk." Again, Al doesn't care, just walks away.
He does at one point say to Al, "Nice beard," which I think I agree. That is a good compliment.
It is very solid, yes.
But then he did ruin it with the thing Brian mentioned. It's like, "Oh, I think I smell chili in it." And Al's deadpan response of, "No, I didn't eat chili."
Right after Al walks away, Tim explains to Stu that, much like Renegade, Al is good at his job, even if he's a bit serious. Stu then sees Pamela Anderson, and that immediately his attention is drawn to her. He walks over and tries to say hi, and she doesn't even make eye contact or say anything.
Which is realistic.
Yeah, why would you? She probably thinks he's like a garbage man that just wandered in or something.
It's like, "Oh, that's Shooter McGavin."
He should be out on the links. And this is, of course, backstage of the Tool Time show. And so it's areas that aren't seen by cameras in universe or whatever. So they have graffiti written on some of their walls. There's one that says "More Power." There's one that says "Vila was here." Bob Vila, of course. And then the other one says "Cable access rules."
With a Z?
Yeah.
Good. That's how you know they're extreme.
But I did like that little touch.
Yeah.
In the background.
See, they're trying with something, I guess.
Well, I'm sure Tim Allen didn't do any of that.
No, that was probably like someone who was bored.
I imagine the Vila was here was Bob Vila. He went on the Home Improvement set and he graffitied
He did that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, he was on the show a couple times.
I'm sure he was. I bet they paid him a lot, too.
Plus, Bob Vila is the real Banksy, I've heard. Stu and Tim decide they're going to get a beer, and then what follows is not something that would ever happen. So these two old college friends in their late 30s decide to go get a beer. Tim Allen suggests they go out to a bar, and Stu, the bachelor, says, "No, I want to go to your house with your wife and kids and have dinner and drink there."
The first of many parts where Stu's character is completely inconsistently written and makes no sense.
And he's supposed to be awful, but the problem is when you're up against Tim Allen as the opposite side, you can't be awful.
He just is a walking, like, denim plot device. So anything he does is just whatever the show needs the plot to do, not what the character would do, and it's just frustrating. So we go to the Taylor house because, of course, that what Shooter McGavin wants, Shooter McGavin gets.
I figured at some point it would devolve and just calling him Shooter McGavin.
Tim races into the house first and warns Jill that Shooter McGavin's there. And Jill says, "Stu only makes fun of me and smashes beer cans on his head, so therefore I don't like him."
And Jill is at the sink here. She pulls a sponge out. It's the biggest sponge I've ever seen in my life. It's like bigger than Tim Allen's
What
head.
do you use that for?
I don't know. She's wiping her hands on it. I don't think she knows what a sponge is.
No, that looks like a sponge you'd use to, when people sponge paint?
Yes,
like
that's
for
exactly
that.
right. To put that stupid pattern on your wall or whatever.
In the 80s, probably. I don't know. I don't think anyone does that now. Jill says Stu can have one beer, and if he crosses any line, he's out. I kick him out of the house. That turns out not to be true. Just then and there, Stu screams and announces that he's there, and he gives Jill a flower, or tries to. She does a really cool maneuver to avoid touching him at first, where she juts 2 beers out at him, so he has to use both hands to grab them. But then he deftly hands the flower off to Tim Allen, freeing his hands anyway, because this Stu, this Shooter McGavin, he likes to touch. So he gets his Jill hug.
However, while obnoxious and annoying, even that already doesn't really work with the character they're building for him, because that's just a really happy to see someone, like she says he's mean to her and makes fun of her, but he seems to really like Jill.
He really likes her, but then he says, Jill, I can tell you've lost weight. How much more are you going to lose? So, yeah, it's a complicated thing, this Stu. He is 5 bad men in one. Stu then says, hey, Tim, if you hadn't married Jill, I'd have fucking taken the bullet for you. I would have married her.
Of course, that's a common thing to say to your friend. It happens all the time.
Everybody says it. Stu then says, where are the boys that I might have been father of? And Jill yells indiscriminately out into the backyard, into the wilderness, and then the boys come running.
They also have a cowbell like stuck to the wall outside the door, and she rings it.
That's the only way you can get boys to come home.
I bet it would be tough with, like, because boys are shitty, right? And having all the boys in there.
3 of Tim Allen's boys.
Oh, God. One of them has a mullet already.
Brad is like the poster child of mullets in that time period.
Yeah.
When I think of mullets, I think of Brad.
Once the boys get inside, Stu starts giving them noogies and calling them things like the Bradster and starting food fights. Has anyone ever done that?
No.
Are those real?
It's a waste of perfectly good food.
Yeah, food's great. You're supposed to eat it.
We saw it in that Goosebumps episode, maybe?
Oh, we did, yeah. But I mean in real life.
Oh, yeah, the birthday party.
Best I got. Oh, that's what it was.
And Goosebumps is more real than Home Improvement, somehow.
Even with the cuckoo clock of doom.
Inspired by all of Stu's wildness, JTT punches his dad in the stomach.
Good.
And then all of the men go to look at the weights in the garage together, like men do. Mark turns and says, Daddy was doing poses for Mommy. And Stu says, as what? A man? Because Tim Allen's not a real man. We all know that's not true. He is the ultimate man.
It's also a good way to actually get under the skin of a Tim Allen type, because to them, the most egregious sin is not being a man.
Oh, to show an ounce of femininity, you are just a joke.
After that joke, everyone, is in the garage ready to do some weight stuff. And Tim has to kind of face down Jill's discomfort and ask, hey, did Stu cross the line by questioning if I'm a man or not? Jill doesn't really answer and really doesn't do much throughout all this. She's pretty compliant and deals with all of it. Stu starts screaming and smashing a beer can into his face, which I guess you could say this Chekhov's beer can was put there in Act 1, which we might still be in. I don't know.
I took that, though, as kind of doing it to entertain the kids. Like they've got this douchebag character who really seems to like Tim's family, which is why it doesn't really work. He's annoying, but he seems genuinely fond of them all, and that's not really how they set him up.
And the farting, the armpit noises, the smashing beer cans, his choice of music even, all seems more suited to little kids.
Right.
This would be showing off for kids.
Yeah.
If he's doing that for the kids, it's totally not the big deal that Jill makes it out to be. But he does have some parts that are obviously he's awful, but it's just he's a very poorly written character.
He is.
Huh.
Poorly executed, perhaps, is his performance of Manfred Mann's doo-wah ditty, which Stu does by farting around in a circle. Armpit farts, not butt farts. And the kids follow suit.
It'd be really impressive if he could actually make that work with
He would have
farts.
needed more than the one beer, I think.
Can you guys do the armpit fart?
No.
No, I don't think I think I tried when I was, like Brad's age or something.
Yeah, and then never did it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not Alan Moo from Doug.
Yeah, I can't do that, but I can do the hands. Can you guys do the hands?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I don't know if I
can't
can
do
do
the
it
hands
that
either.
loud.
I'm
Try
really
it.
good at it.
Yeah, maybe I could when I was young. Oh, there we go.
Ooh, you little squeaky one there.
Not
Brian.
as big
I
as
can't
yours.
do it.
Oh, come on.
I can. I used to try. There are a series of kid hand things.
You
Here we
couldn't do.
go. That people would try to get me to do, and I would first politely say, "This does not matter to me. I do not need to learn to. I do not need to learn to snap my fingers. I do not need to learn how to do hand farts, things of that nature." And kids would say, "Come on, I'll show you." And I would politely again say, "I would not like to learn this skill. There are other skills I'd like to learn." And the kids would always press me and then usually call me a slur for not participating.
Okay,
but
go like this.
I would not do that. Yeah, see, this is
Go like
exactly
this.
it. I can feel it. I can feel the heat rising.
And then you put your hands together and open it up, and it looks like a vagina.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
See, and it's oddly similar to the thing where in church where they would make you smush your hands together and spread them apart and say, "There's the steeple." I knew how to do that, unfortunately.
Wait.
Whoa, Van's pulling his thumb off his hand. For some reason, the Manfred Mann performance is what does it for Jill. She asks Tim to go ahead and kick Stu out. He's had the one beer. This sucks. And Tim says, okay, and makes the kids go inside. But before he can kick Stu out, Stu does something Tim did not count on. He double dog dares Tim to bench press 150 pounds while wearing his sweater.
Is that a lot?
I don't know.
I have no frame of reference
I
for
think
that.
it would be for like me.
Yeah, it's not like a bodybuilder type, but it's a decent
It's a hardy amount. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think any of us could do it?
No, probably not. I don't think I was never good at bench pressing, but I don't think I ever did that much. And I used to go to the gym all the time.
Well, Tim Allen does it with no problem. Well, I mean, he has some problem. After he does the bench press, because he is a real man, he can do it. He kind of walks around with squinted eyes and hunched shoulders. This is his, again, form of physical comedy, much like the Schwarzenegger thing earlier. All Tim Allen physical comedy involves just spreading your arms out wider from your body.
He's like a bird that sees a snake, so it wants to make itself appear bigger.
This, again, felt off and weird to me, like two men in their 30s being like, I bet you can't lift that weight like you could back in college. With the kids inside now, Tim Allen having completed the lift, Stu starts talking about the old days. Now, he and Tim Allen used to impress old Donna Gilmore in a 68 Impala.
Donna Gilmore was fucking hot.
Tim starts fantasizing about the car, not Donna, saying things about tubular headers and 327 small blocks.
And, to be honest, as much as I hate Home Improvement, Tim Allen saying car terms like this sounds more realistic. Like, I bought that more than Bones saying science terms.
Well, these probably are real things.
True. But, he's not an actor, but I don't know. I feel like this is the one thing he did that was, okay, I buy this.
Yeah, you're in your wheelhouse here, Tim. Wheelhouse, what better name for garage, actually, than wheelhouse?
I imagine there were plenty of dumb car guys watching the show at the time that felt the way you did when he started saying car terms. They felt all warm and fuzzy inside.
Oh,
like,
327 small
I
block.
like that Tim Allen when he talks about car parts. This is a good show.
And the whole time that he's talking to Tim, he's bench pressing 150 pounds.
Yeah.
So Stu's fucking strong.
Yeah, how do you think he hits a golf ball that far?
This was his training for Happy Gilmore, the scene.
This reminiscing ends with, or this part of it ends with Tim Allen saying, too bad we lost the car in the fire. And then
And all those preschoolers, too. But,
but the car. Think about how many preschoolers it could transport with the top down. These two guys are so into cars that upon coming across a photo of the thing, they in unison say, hood up, hood down. I don't know why. Maybe it was a catchphrase they shared in college.
Cars.
Hemi. Then we get the real point of this episode, in so much as there is one. Stu says, I wish I could go back. Those days were the best of my life. Tim says, I don't know, they were good, but I like the way things are now. Anyway, it's family night and we're out of beer, so Stu says, fine, I'll go get more beer.
Stu misses the hint for the 9th time.
Stu's not, I guess, a guy who picks up on social cues.
Yeah, I don't know that it's very believable when someone says, you come into town to visit a friend, he's like, well, it's family night. I don't know very many friends who would be like, cool, I'll join. It just wouldn't happen.
I love family night.
And they keep missing opportunities because what you do here to make him like a scumbag, to help add to that, you make him be like, okay, I'll go get the beer. Give me some money. And like Tim reluctantly gives him money. You got to do these little things that make him seem worse instead of making him seem like a great dad to these kids.
And there are shows that could pull this off, that could make this character complex enough to be kind of lovable and kind of a scumbag. But the thing is, Home Improvement's not doing that. It's doing exactly what Spencer said early on. It's giving the character whatever trait it wants very inconsistently. It's not like the character isn't written as complex. He becomes convoluted on accident.
Right. And he's not nearly as unlikable as I think they thought he was going to be.
Right.
I didn't think anyway.
I didn't think so either. I think we're supposed to hate him, and I hate Tim Allen.
Can only hate one person at a time, at least with that much passion.
Tim does not stop Stu. He doesn't say, actually, I talked about this with my wife, and you've got to go. Stu asks for his coat, and Jill is psyched, but then Stu reveals, I'm just going to get more beer. I'll be back. Tim sucks. He's human vermin. Because, again, that's a term of endearment. Stu burps and leaves. Jill is not outraged yet. She, in fact, has Tim sample her chili, and then she asks him point blank, are you actually still friends with Stu? Like, if you guys met right now, without your shared history, would you be friends? And Tim says, yeah, it's a guy thing. You just don't get it. He's funny.
I'm too stupid to do it otherwise.
Yeah, I feel like Jill, when she's stirring the chili right there, her line should have been, we probably need to get to what the actual theme of the episode is. Let's talk about what the real friendship between you and Stu has turned into, Tim.
Tim, we're kind of running out of time. We only got 22 minutes.
We got to teach a lesson here. Let's go.
This is a family show.
You should probably go talk to Wilson, and then we got to wrap it here.
Tim then says, okay, and goes out in the backyard with a bag of tools, and he hears his neighbor Wilson stirring behind the neighboring fence. What's he doing? He's making horseshoes out of steel, and we even get to see him use a quench to temper his metal.
It was water, though. You don't quench in water.
No. What would Doug Marcaida say about that?
I mean, those horseshoes aren't keeling?
That works.
I mean, what do they do?
I bet you can bludgeon someone with one.
Okay.
These horseshoes will score points in horseshoes, I guess, because that's what Wilson wants him for, not for a horse, which might interest Richard Karn, but but for playing horseshoes.
From that very scene when he saw Wilson do it, he's like, I should be in a horse movie someday. Not yet.
Give me a couple decades. I've
not
got
ready.
money. I've got actual money to make right now. Wilson starts waxing poetically about horseshoes themselves, and then Tim says, Wilson, I have a problem. So anyway, my bud Stu thinks I'm the same Tim from 15 years ago, but I'm a real adult now. Tim understands that he has changed, but Stu hasn't, and Wilson, being, a wise owl of a man, summarizes it rather neatly.
Well, it sounds like he's spending all his time looking backwards, and you're spending yours looking forward.
That's it, I can't keep up with this guy. The thought of crushing a beer can on my head makes my butt quiver.
Again, high-level comedy, but yes, Wilson explains the problem here.
Quivering butts.
You wouldn't guess it by Tim Allen's lines there, but he's the mature one who's grown up.
Also, he's presenting it here not so much as like, I'm happy with my family, which is what they're getting at, but more that Stu is just living this hard, crazy, wild lifestyle that he can't physically endure anymore.
Which we don't actually get a sense of. It seems pretty normal to want to have a few beers when you're in town with your friend. That doesn't feel like, again, the show doesn't present him as out of control in the way that I think it wants to.
And Wilson, all the while, dresses like, I think like the Unabomber would dress. That's what he wears.
Wilson's the kind of guy who, if you found out he was the Unabomber, you would say, yeah, okay, makes sense.
He was a great guy. He always treated me well, but I buy this. But I buy that he blew a bunch of people up.
Yeah. He's got a manifesto or two in his basement, bound in maybe human hair.
Did you know that in the story of Home Improvement, in the lore of it all, the canon book, that Wilson is actually like the brother of the Beach Boys Wilsons?
Of all of them, wow. So he's not related to Mike Love, though?
No, just the Wilsons.
That's good. That guy sucks.
Yeah, well, most of them suck, apparently.
Yeah, but at least some of them made very good music 55 years ago or something.
Kokomo.
And they were also prominent in Full House. Did you guys know John Stamos is just fucking in the Beach Boys now?
What?
Yeah, he's a band member.
I didn't know he was a musician.
It's just like Mike Love, John Stamos, and a bunch of random people.
Oh, it doesn't really sound like the Beach Boys then anymore.
I think that what you would call this is a blatant cash grab.
Have you ever seen John Stamos' belly button? It's fucked up.
I feel like, how have I not if I haven't? Because Full House, I've seen like all of those.
He's got a fucked up belly button.
Does he take his shirt off in Full House, though? That would be weird.
He flexes a lot.
Well, the sex scenes.
He and Bob Saget?
Yes.
Yeah, before Aunt Becky got put in jail for getting her daughter into college a weird way. That's more real life than not in Full House, though. Wilson tells Tim, look, I think the real issue is you're having trouble saying goodbye. And maybe time to put childish things, Stu, away.
He has to have the lessons just bashed into his head.
Well, it's because Tim Allen's stupid.
Well, that is very true. And is it next week or this one where, I think it's next week, but Wilson's advice is so high level for Tim, all he can do is go.
Stu runs up screaming into the backyard with a bunch of beers and says, I ran into Mike and Tino, the boys, and they're going to Club Piranha later, which sounds pretty cool.
You guys want to go to Club Piranha?
Let's go.
I would.
I hope they have actual piranhas in tanks there for kind of ambiance.
Not in tanks. You go in the tank, which is the entire place, and fight piranha.
And all the...
Now I'm...
It's a club with a club.
I think I would lose.
All the dancers there are piranhas' heads.
Well, that's hot.
Never mind, I want to go.
Hey, I can shoot web or something. Well, aren't I hot?
Yes.
Tim is able to turn down this Club Piranha offer despite Stu going on and on about the old days some more. Stu then tries another thing. He says, Tim, what if I had Tino bring a keg over to your family night?
Again, this is maybe the worst offense yet. Stu at this point finally seems like he's doing a thing that his character would do, which is, well, I'm going to bail on the family thing and go out with the friends. And Tim's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And he's like, well, we'll come here. That would not happen.
The unspoken undercurrent of this scene, though, is that Stu wants to go to the club and Tim Allen wants him to go. So they both actually do want the same thing to happen here. But I would argue this is, again, weird characterization for Stu because you can tell he feels really bad about it. Stu finally goes, I guess I'll go to the club alone, but only after Tim urges him to. He still wanted Tim to be involved. So, again, it's kind of muddled because you can kind of see how this is babyface behavior in a way, like the idea of like, well, I still want my buddy to go. I want to be with my friend.
And Tim's trying to take Wilson's advice here when Stu ends up leaving and he says, I don't think it is like the old days, Stu. And I guess that's his way of being like, we're not really friends anymore, buddy.
And Stu doesn't fight it. There's like a look of acceptance and he says, especially once he finds out they're watching The Sound of Music, because again, everybody hates it so much.
Except Jill.
Yeah, except for Jill. Stu says, I'll go to the club. I'll go to Club Piranha, and everybody's fine with this decision.
One thing that I think was done unintentionally in this episode, but I think does help it a little bit, not enough because the whole thing's stupid, but is they don't have a soundtrack for a lot of this. It's just dead silence in the background, and that adds a little bit of
gravitas.
Yeah, it just makes it a little more ominous.
Now, if they would have had some drills and clanks and in the background, it might have ruined it.
I imagine Tim Allen suggested that, and they were like, no, let's let these heart-to-heart scenes with you and Stu let's let them stand in the round.
Are you sure? I've got a saw right here.
They have to basically tell him, like, no, we're going to put the grunts in later and hope he forgets about
grunts
it.
Go in post.
I really like the idea, though, too, of Van commenting on how I just want to say the emotional impact because there is no soundtrack was pretty deep.
No.
Got a little teary-eyed having to say goodbye to Stu. By the way, Wilson's advice, though, to be like, maybe it's time you told Stu to fuck off and never talk to you again was a little extreme.
I gotta say, though, while too extreme, I think he should have not ever having even met the man said, don't ever be friends with him. But I like that the show at least kind of tries to get into the topic that is weird of when you're an adult and you've outgrown some of your friends.
Yeah, this is a real thing.
Yeah, it is a real thing. The show just doesn't do anything interesting with that.
No. And I don't think in reality that you actually do have to tell the person that your friendship has expired.
You do a quiet death thing. Everybody knows that. You don't be an open fucking dick about it. God.
Especially when it's Stu Cutler, who's just a wonderful person, apparently.
And he's going to be busy on the fucking PGA Tour all year anyway. That's a traveling thing.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like he's around that much, so you can just do what Tim did, except better, which is get rid of him, and then you deal with it again when he's back in town in another year.
Inside the Taylor house, the boys are still just fucking amped up from this Stu visit. They're doing more pit farts. Tim and Stu update everyone on the new plans, the Club Piranha thing. Jill is relieved. Stu says, Jill, boys, I'm going to miss you guys. And he does some high fives and hugs, says he goodbye with Tim. And he promises to give more notice the next time he stops in town. And I think we're supposed to kind of understand he might not, though. I think.
Oh, I just got chills.
He might not give notice.
He
next
might not
time?
come back.
That I
yeah. Kind of like, hey, I'll be sure to give more notice. Kind of acknowledging his failure and acknowledging that the times they are a changing.
And then he
Home Improvement's good.
Stepped outside and stabbed himself in the stomach.
What you're implying it was definitely subtly intended there actually would be very impactful in a show that was meant to do that sort of thing.
Yes, but again, no, this is not that. Yeah, this is very bad. As another gesture of goodwill, Stu hands the big crate of nondescript beer to Tim. Tim doesn't even really want it, but he takes it. He understands. He understands also this is important to Stu to give me this.
It looks like, you said nondescript beer, but it looks like maybe it's a little fancier because they were drinking Miller Lite when Stu's crushing the beer cans.
That could be. I only see nondescript because that box, I couldn't tell what it was.
I don't think they could put a brand, so they're like, let's not show what it is. But it looked like it might have been a more real beer that Stu bought. So that
Should have been Tool Time brand beer.
I would want that. If
Sawdust flavor.
I think that was maybe Stu's kind of parting gift to him. Like,
yes.
I want you to have this to remember me by.
Yeah, it's all he could do, essentially, is say, I will be on time next time, and here's this beer.
Oh,
we'll remember each other fondly one day. Jill grabs her tissue box, but it's not to mourn the loss of a long friendship. It's to watch The Sound of Music, and the family sits around the fucking dinner table and watches TV while craning their necks. Has anyone ever done this?
I feel like this is a situation where they want to say they're highbrow, so they don't go sit at the couch and watch TV and eat.
Then do,
so
like,
we have to be at the
trays.
table. No, we're at the
I
table.
feel like...
We're powerful.
You do TV trays in the living room or whatever, especially in the 90s, or you fucking put a TV in the kitchen.
They wanted both.
You know what, though? The movie starts and, it's bayonet hell. Jill didn't get what she wanted in terms of spouse, probably how her kids turned out, or this movie.
The Tim did a little Machiavellian planning there. He went to get the VHS and he got what he wanted, not what she wanted.
She didn't want Stu over. Stu was over all day. She didn't want to watch Bayonet Hell. They're watching Bayonet Hell.
Men make decisions, guys.
Back to Tool time. Tim and Al are back at work being men, talking about what you do with a storm door. And Tim tries to take a fucking shot at Al. We talked about this a little earlier, but he does so in an area Al is remarkably comfortable in.
Today, we hung a storm door on an existing wood frame. Now, the important thing about putting the door in is hanging it, because if it's not hung well, you got a problem, right, Al?
Speak for yourself, Tim.
For once, I agree with an audience reaction. We understand Al's got an elephant trunk down there.
We actually cut the part that the audience after that starts a chant, kind of like the Gior chant, except it's Karn, cock, Karn, cock, Karn, cock.
Tim talks about how doors change and age and warp over time, a metaphor perhaps for he and Stu growing apart. It's weird how sometimes your work and your home life bleed into one. I don't know what I'm doing here, guys.
No,
stop me.
That's definitely what they were going for, though.
And perhaps as a metaphor for what he did to Stu, Tim then shatters the storm door's glass, trying to shut it. The end. Oh, or is it? Because we get a full fucking minute of outtakes and bloopers from this episode these are usually funny. If you watch these for like Parks and Rec or The Office or anything ever, you see comedians joking around with one another and it's infectious because they're laughing together. This is just Tim Allen fucking up lines and them having him do them again.
It's horrible, and I love bloopers so much, but this is bad.
Super boring.
Tim Allen's outtakes are boring.
Yes.
Tim Allen is an outtake, as far as I am concerned. And as far as you guys are concerned, this episode sucked. We all agree on that. There's nothing very good about Home Improvement. Does anyone have anything to add?
Next week, I'll prep you guys in advance here. I'm going to ask of our bad, shitty sitcoms that we've watched, where everything ranks.
I'll be ready.
That is going to flow naturally into a conversation we're going to have next week also about 90s comedians that helmed sitcoms.
I do have one thing that I want to throw out there, and what would be wonderful is if I remembered what that was going to be, because it left my head as I was
You
saying
did a thing I do all the time where you just keep hoping it's going to get there, but
sometimes it does.
Mm-hmm.
It may.
Other times not so much.
Let's give it a good 10 seconds or so and then see if it comes back.
Do you need a hammer? Will that help?
Oh, I've got it.
Okay.
It's there. It's there. Oh, it's gone again. Van, you picked these episodes, and I think you said they were both supposed to be like the worst of Home Improvement, right?
Yes, and after watching these two, I went back to check to see, because I feel like this one wasn't that bad. It was bad.
This is normal bad.
But like next week's horrible.
Well, so I was wondering, though, if this was genuinely supposed to be considered like the very worst, because, I mean, it's not good, but it's not the very worst thing you could ever see on TV.
No, we're about to prove that.
Going back to look, it was on a worst episodes list, but it was somebody's list.
I see.
Whereas the one that I got next episodes from is a legit one. That's the IMDb rating or something or other. So I buy that this was a bad episode for someone because they probably stopped watching after the first season, but I don't think it was as bad as any other given Home Improvement.
We went into this quite a bit, but they were going for a thing in this episode. Did they pull it off? No, it's Home Improvement, but they were going for a thing, and if they had pulled it off, it would have been really good.
I'm honestly an easy mark for this sort of thing, too. For this sort of like phases of life changing and people having to try and fit their lives together as they grow and change. Love this sort of stuff when it's handled with like actual care and creative gifts.
Not just hammered into a wall, basically.
Fittingly
I'm trying to
enough.
make it fit with Home Improvement.
With Tool Time, yeah. So yeah, Home Improvement is shitty. We're going to be back next week to talk about it some more. If you haven't had your fill of us yet after this, though, you should go to YouTube, where we have videos being uploaded diligently by Van. You can go to Bootu Inc., that's bootuinc.com, and check out stuff we've written, GIFs with little descriptions of the episodes we cover that are very funny, I think. I love it when you guys do them. I laugh out loud. And you know what else? Go to Patreon. We've got bonus episodes there. It's free, or you can donate if you would like to. And perhaps most importantly, wherever you listen to us, if it's Apple Podcasts, if it's Spotify, whatever, please leave us a review, a 5-star beautiful baby review, and we will get a tattoo of Tim Allen or something, or Richard Karn. Or
Richard
horse.
Karn would be a bearded Richard Karn.
You tell us which one of the 3 kids is the best. We'll get that kid's tattoo.
Oh, I'm not getting JTT anywhere on.
You get Brad, though.
Fine, he's got the mullet. I'll do
JTT.
a mulleted Brad.
You're stuck with Mark, Brian.
I'll just grow a mullet. I mean, it would just be cutting part of it off, right?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, so give us a review for sure.
We'll be back next week to talk more home improvement and have mullets.